They called him a failure. They laughed when he slept hungry. They ignored him when he needed help the most. What none of them knew was that the man they mocked had more money than their entire town combined. This is not a story about wealth. It is a story about truth, about loyalty, and about what happens when a billionaire chooses to become poor, just to find out who is real. This is the story of the billionaire who pretended to be poor to find real friends. Before we continue, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. Long before he became the poor man everyone avoided, Emeka Adebayo lived a life few people could even imagine, let alone understand. From the outside, his life looked perfect. Private flights, luxury estates tucked behind tall gates, boardrooms where men twice his age waited for his approval before speaking. By the age of 35, Emeka had quietly built an empire that stretched across logistics, agriculture, real estate, and technology. Ships moved because of his signatures. Crops reached international markets because of his systems. Entire communities worked because of companies he owned, companies that never carried his name. He hated attention. While other wealthy men chased headlines, Emeka buried himself deeper in silence. His lawyers were instructed to erase his presence from public records. His companies operated through layers of trustees and partners. His wealth moved invisibly like wind, powerful, unseen, undeniable. Noise attracts problems, he once told his assistant. Silence attracts truth. But silence had a cost. As the money grew, something else began to shrink. Connection. At first, Emeka didn't notice it. Success is loud. It distracts easily. Meetings ran late into the night. Deals crossed continents. Numbers multiplied faster than emotions could keep up. But slowly, things began to feel wrong. Friends laughed too hard at his jokes. Compliments came too quickly, too perfectly timed. Advice always seemed to benefit them more than him. At dinners, people leaned forward, not to listen but to calculate. At parties, smiles lingered longer than necessary, as if memorizing his reactions. Even kindness had conditions. When he spoke, everyone agreed. When he arrived, conversations paused. When he paid, gratitude followed, loud and exaggerated. And yet, when he fell silent, no one noticed. One night, Emeka hosted a lavish event in one of his estates, a celebration filled with lights, music, and praise. Men in tailored suits toasted his success. Women praised his discipline, his humility, his vision. Applause filled the hall. But when the night ended and the guests left, the mansion became painfully quiet. Emeka remained seated at the long dining table, staring at a glass in front of him. Not wine, not champagne, just water. He lifted it, took a sip, and frowned, not at the taste, but at the emptiness it reflected back at him. For the first time in years, the silence did not feel powerful, felt lonely. He leaned back in his chair and asked himself a question he had avoided for too long. If everything I have disappeared today, who would still sit with me tomorrow? The thought tightened his chest. Not who would call, not who would apologize, not who would beg, who would simply stay. He imagined losing his wealth overnight. No access, no influence, no protection. Would the laughter remain? Would the smiles stay warm? Would anyone still listen? The answer frightened him. 'Cause deep down, he already knew it. That night Emeka did not sleep. He walked through his mansion, past rooms filled with expensive art he barely remembered buying, past furniture chosen by designers, not by desire, past mirrors that reflected success but not fulfillment. And in that quiet walk, a dangerous idea formed. An idea so extreme that even his most loyal advisors would beg him to abandon it. Within weeks, Emeka made his decision. He would disappear. Not as a vacation. Not as an experiment spoken aloud. But as a complete erasure. No wealth. No name. No influence. No safety net anyone could see. He would strip himself of everything the world respected him for, and present himself with nothing but his humanity. He would live as a poor man, not to escape wealth, but to test truth, not to punish the world, but to discover who was real. And with that decision, Emeka Adebayo, the man who had everything, began the journey that would change him forever. Emeka did not choose poverty by accident. He chose it carefully. Far away from glass buildings, private airports, and men who bowed before him, Emeka selected a place where his name meant nothing and his face carried no memory. Idera Village. A small town tucked between dusty roads and uneven hills. A place where gossip traveled faster than the wind, and where a person's worth was measured not by character, but by appearance. It was perfect. He arrived quietly at dawn, when the village was just beginning to stir. Roosters crowed. Smoke rose from early cooking fires. The smell of wood and wet earth filled the air. Emeka stepped down from an old bus wearing torn clothes that clung loosely to his body. His shoes were cracked, his hair uncombed. He carried a small bag, nothing inside it except a change of worn clothing and a folded blanket. No security, no assistant, no announcement. He stood still for a moment, watching life unfold. Women passed him with baskets balanced expertly on their heads. Men gathered near a kiosk discussing politics and football. Children chased each other through dust, laughing loudly. No one welcomed him. No one asked where he came from. They didn't need to. The moment their eyes touched his appearance, they decided who he was. Nobody. By midday, Emeka found a leaking room behind a roadside shop. The roof sagged slightly. Water pooled on the floor when it rained. The owner barely looked at him while collecting payment. "You can stay," the man said flatly. "But don't cause trouble." That night, Emeka lay on the thin mattress listening to rain drip steadily into a cracked bucket. He smiled faintly. This was the life he had chosen. The following days stripped him slowly. He worked odd jobs, hauling firewood, carrying sacks of grain, cleaning refuse others avoided. He accepted work no one wanted, for pay barely enough to eat. His body adjusted painfully. Hands that once signed contracts now blistered. Muscles screamed under unfamiliar strain. Hunger gnawed at him with sharp persistence. But hunger was not the hardest part. Being unseen was. He greeted people who never responded. He smiled at faces that turned away. He stood near conversations that paused, then resumed without him. At the market, sellers mocked his accent. "Are you sure you can afford this?" One laughed, waving a handful of tomatoes. At the village well, women stepped aside, not to give space, but as if poverty itself could jump from him to them. Even children learned quickly. They laughed. They pointed. They mimicked his walk, his clothes, his quiet nature. At first, Emeka felt the sting deeply. There were nights he sat alone in his room, staring at the walls, remembering the sound of applause, the weight of respect, the warmth of artificial smiles. Here silence was real. Here kindness was rare. And yet, Emeka did not complain. Instead he watched. He observed how people treated him when they believed he had nothing. Who laughed openly. Who avoided eye contact. Who hesitated before offering help, and then withdrew. He noticed the ones who mocked him publicly and greeted him politely when others were watching. He noticed who kicked dust in his path, and who quietly stepped around him. But most importantly, he watched for kindness without witnesses, help without applause, respect without reward. Because Emeka was not searching for pity. He was searching for truth. And somewhere within Idera Village, hidden beneath layers of judgment and pride, he believed there were still hearts that would recognize a human being, even when the world saw only a poor man. Little did he know, one small act of kindness would soon change everything. Not everyone in Idera Village was cruel. Most people judged quickly. Some laughed openly. Others ignored him with practiced ease. But scattered among the many hardened hearts were a few quiet, ordinary people who still saw a human being before an appearance. They did not announce themselves. They did not seek praise. They simply acted. There was Sola, an old carpenter whose hands were rough and permanently stained with wood dust. He worked under a neem tree near the market, repairing stools and doors. One afternoon, when Emeka collapsed onto a bench nearby from exhaustion, Sola wordlessly split his meal in half and placed it beside him. No questions, no speeches, just food. When Emeka tried to thank him, Sola waved him off. "Tomorrow is not promised," the old man said calmly. "If I eat alone today, I may sleep alone tomorrow." Then there was Binta, a widowed woman who sold roasted corn by the roadside. Each morning, as Emeka passed her stall, she greeted him with the same warm smile. "Good morning, my son." Other sellers laughed at her. "Why do you greet that one?" they teased. "He has nothing." Binta never argued. She simply kept greeting him. To Emeka, that greeting became a lifeline, a reminder that not all dignity had disappeared from the world. And then, there was Zainab. She worked at a small roadside cafe that served rice, beans, and tea to travelers and workers. The cafe was always noisy, always crowded, always alive with chatter and judgment. The first time Emeka walked in, the room fell quiet. His clothes were dusty, his posture weary, his voice soft. Can I eat and pay later?" he asked. The owner laughed loudly. "Credit," he scoffed. "Go and beg elsewhere." Someone nearby snickered. Another deliberately spilled water near Emeka's feet. The humiliation burned. But before Emeka could turn away, a gentle voice cut through the noise. "I'll pay." Zainab stepped forward, her apron stained from work, her eyes steady. She placed money on the counter. No anger, no drama, just action. The cafe grew awkwardly silent. Outside, Emeka stood stunned. "Why?" he asked quietly. Zainab shrugged. "Hunger doesn't need permission," she said simply. From that day something changed. Zainab greeted him by name. She asked how his day had been. She spoke to him as if his life mattered. Not with pity, not with curiosity, not with expectation, just respect. Over the weeks, Emeka found himself lingering near the cafe, not for food but for conversation. They spoke about simple things. Weather, work, dreams that felt too big to say aloud. She never asked for his past. He never offered it. And slowly, Emeka began to smile again. Not because life had become easy, but because kindness still existed. In return, he gave what he could. He helped Sola carry wood. He watched Binta's stall when she stepped away. He listened when people spoke, truly listened. He offered encouragement instead of complaints, patience instead of bitterness. Quietly, a small circle formed around him. Not friends of wealth, not friends of advantage, but friends of character. And one night, as Emeka lay awake listening to distant laughter and night insects, a realization settled into his heart. This was the answer he had been searching for all along. Not in boardrooms, not in contracts, not in applause, but in the few who saw him, when the world chose not to. Time passed. Not in dramatic leaps, but in quiet, ordinary days that slowly rearranged the balance of Idera Village. And something unexpected began to happen. The same people who once laughed at Emeka began to struggle. The loudest mockers lost customers. The proud traders watched their stalls empty. Men who once bragged about connections waited endlessly for calls that never came. Businesses failed. Jobs disappeared. Promises dissolved like smoke. People whispered at night, "Things are changing. Something is wrong." Meanwhile, something else, something far quieter, was happening in the shadows. Opportunities began to find Emeka's circle. Sola received a call from a supplier who had refused him for years, offering fair prices, no conditions. Binta's roasted corn stand was selected for a small community grant. A scholarship letter arrived for a young boy Emeka had been tutoring in the evenings. No bribery, no favors demanded, no explanations given, just approval. The village noticed. Eyes followed Emeka now. Voices lowered when he passed. Who is he? People began to ask. Why does luck follow him? They watched him closely, trying to spot wealth in his clothes, power in his posture, importance in his silence. But Emeka remained the same. He still carried loads, still wore worn shoes, still greeted everyone, kind or cruel, with the same calm nod. Only he knew the truth. Behind the scenes, his wealth still existed. Not loudly, not recklessly, carefully guided, strategically placed, like a river flowing underground. Then came the turning point. A regional development project was announced. Roads would be rebuilt, markets expanded, jobs created. The kind of project that could change a town's future. Executives arrived in black SUVs. Security filled the streets. Local leaders dressed their best. The village gathered as a luxury vehicle pulled into the square. Doors opened. The lead investor stepped out. Polished shoes. Calm authority. A presence that commanded attention without a word. He scanned the crowd once, then smiled, and spoke. Mr. Adebayo. The name fell like thunder. Emeka, standing at the edge of the crowd, holding a sack of cement, turned slowly. Silence swallowed the village. Zainab's hands trembled where she stood. Sola's hammer slipped from his grip. Binta covered her mouth. Eyes widened. Whispers died. The investor stepped forward respectfully. We've been looking for you, sir. The poor man they had ignored, dismissed, stood quietly in front of them. Emeka looked around. At the faces that once laughed. At the ones who looked away. At the few who stayed kind. Not with anger. Not with pride. But with clarity. And in a voice steady enough to carry truth without cruelty, he said. Now, we talk. The truth spread faster than lies ever had. By morning everyone knew. By evening no one could deny it. The man they had mocked. The stranger they ignored. The poor nobody they had stepped around on dusty roads. Was Emeka Adebayo. The name carried weight now. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Eyes followed him through the market. Voices softened, suddenly respectful. And then the apologies began. They came in many forms. Some arrived with bowed heads and trembling voices. I was wrong. I judged you. I treated you badly. Others came dressed in smiles, laughing too loudly, explaining too much. I didn't know. You should have told us. We were just joking. Emeka listened, quietly, carefully. He heard the words, but he listened for the heart behind them. Some apologized because they were ashamed. Others apologized because the truth had exposed them. And Emeka understood something important. Forgiveness does not require trust. So he forgave many. But he trusted few. Zainab never asked for money. Even after the truth was known, she continued working at the cafe. Serving customers. Wiping tables. Smiling the same gentle smile. When Emeka offered help, she said softly, help the town. Not me. Sola never begged. When others rushed to his door with proposals and ideas, Sola kept carving wood beneath the tree where he had always sat. The same hands that shared bread, he said, don't need reward. Binta never changed. She still greeted Emeka each morning. Still scolded him for skipping meals. Still spoke to him like a son, not a billionaire. Those were his people. Not because they were loyal after success, but because they were kind before it. Emeka kept his promise to Idera Village. But not in ways that created dependency. He invested, not to impress but to empower. A school was built, staffed with trained teachers. A vocational center opened for carpentry, farming, and trade. Small business owners received training, not handouts. Young people were offered scholarships tied to service and discipline. Opportunities were created. Not gifts, not favors, chances. And the town began to change. Not because money arrived, but because dignity returned. One evening, at a community gathering beneath the open sky, someone asked the question everyone had been wondering. Why? Why choose poverty when you had everything? Emeka stood quietly for a moment. Then he answered simply. Because money can buy attention. But only humility reveals truth. The crowd fell silent. He continued, his voice steady, not bitter, not proud. I wanted to know who would stand beside me when I had nothing to offer. And now I know. He looked toward Zainab, toward Sola, toward Binta, and smiled. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Not everyone who ignores you is your enemy. Sometimes the poorest season of your life is only a test of hearts. And the greatest wealth you can ever have is not money. It is knowing who stands with you when you have nothing to offer. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a like. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next captivating story filled with love, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Until our next story.